Okay, what do you want to do tonight?
The same thing we do every night, Pinky. Try to take over the world.
All right, yo, let's get into it.
Try to take over the world.
Speech and freedom.
Try to take over the world.
And greatest chaplain in the world, Mr.
Try
Lance
to
O'Neill.
take over the world.
Yo, what up, world? It is, what is it, Sunday? Oh my God, it's Sunday evening, the week before Thanksgiving. Welcome. It's your boys, the POGs. We are here. Chappie, what's up, man? It is the last Sunday before Thanksgiving. Are you ready?
I am. It was funny when we were doing the opening, we still have the part with Greg Easterbrook in there. That was a year ago. I had that pop up in my line a year ago this week, which is just insane. I didn't realize we've been doing this a year already.
That's insane. So wait, so we probably had our 1 year anniversary and didn't even realize it.
Probably a while ago.
Yeah, that's what. All right, we have got to do a better job at tracking that. So we are going to continuation. For those of you guys that are joining us, welcome. We're going to keep it really light today. We got a 60-minute hard cap today. So these topics are going to be fast and furious. We're going to jump right into it. We started the conversation offline. We're going to bring it online with you guys and get you guys to kind of chime in. We were talking about Social Security. Chappie, you was in the middle of making a point. If you want to continue on while I get this thing typed and queued up, and then we'll jump in.
Sure. So we're talking about Social Security because there have been some different things that are projected or the new administration is saying are possibilities. Now, remember, all this stuff is done, it has to go through legislation. So and that's one of the things when we're going to talk about, the new Trump administration, that all the things that they want to do, you can't just do things. You have to have them passed by Congress. And one of the issues is potentially some of the laws that are going through Congress are repeals of previous exceptions and some of the taxation to how things are done. People that are making X amount of money from their retirement because they were civil servants. So they're going to get rid of that where they're getting the full amount instead of a tax, having it taxed at a certain rate, for example. So some of these things that are going to go away will actually help people that are retired. But when you help people that are retired, basically with this tax cut, what it does is it gives more money back from the Social Security fund. Problem with the Social Security fund is, so we all look at Social Security fund. I think generally just the average person says the Social Security fund, well, I paid into it, so I get out. That's how it works. If I put in X amount of money, I should get out X amount. I should be able to retire on it. But that's not really what it is. It was never intended to be that. And part of the problem is the population change with the boomers and the way things have gone is it used to be there were 12 people paying into Social Security for every one person that was collecting. And the last number I read is it's 1.8 or 1.9 workers right now for every one person retiring. So that's just not sustainable. And the money's going to run out. I believe it's like 2032, 2033. And when the money runs out for that, what you're going to have, that doesn't mean that the money will go to zero. Okay. Just because you run out of the fund, that's the excess. But what it will mean is what you saw in Greece about 20 years ago, where instead of getting 100% of your quote unquote benefits, your Social Security benefits, it's going to drop down into the mid 70s. Suddenly people are going to start freaking out. What do you mean I don't get this amount? What do you mean I go from, nice round numbers? What do you mean I'm going from $1,000 a month to only $700 a month? I paid into this. Why is there's no money left. Well, what do you mean? Where'd it go? Well, the Social Security Fund has been a great target for years and years and years by every administration going, hey, we need more money. Go take it out of Social Security, and it never seems to go back in. So I kind of look at the Trump administration, and this is one of those things that I hope the Trump administration actually does the hard work on, that they're willing to say, even though short term this might look bad. And what my suggestion, I've heard it suggested by others, would be you tie Social Security basically to age and the age expectancy, life expectancy, right? Because when Social Security started, that 65 was actually above life expectancy. So most people weren't collecting because most people were dying before that. Well, now we're at a point where life expectancy for males in the US is somewhere around 76 and a half, and for women, it's around 78. So now you're having people collect for years, for a decade and more, where before it wasn't nearly that amount of time. And I understand the argument of, well, if you work your entire life, you should be able to have some time to relax and this and that. And I get that, but you're not relaxing off of Social Security. You're scraping by off of Social Security. Social Security is there to meet it's basic income for all intents and purposes. It's a basic income, which means it should be enough to take care of you in a nursing home. And if you've ever worked in nursing home or anything to do with nursing home industry, you'll notice most nursing homes, their minimum price point is Social Security plus Medicare or whatever they're paying. So it's kind of like if you've been in the military and you go out into a round post and you say how much you charging for rent, the first question they say is, well, you know how much BH is, right? That's what we're charging. So I kind of hope that the Trump administration works with the legislature and they move the age up. Now, look, I don't think this has to be done in terms of the age would go from, and remember right now, here's the other part. The other part people don't realize is that Social Security is not you collect at 65. You can start collecting at 62 and it's a lower percentage. And if you wait until 65, you make a little bit more. And if you wait until 67 to start collecting, you make a significant amount more. Mm-hmm. So my thought is that if you were to say, let's just use the 65 or even 62 as a baseline. Let's start with 62. I think if you were to say over the next 10 years, that 62 is going to go up to 65 over the next 10 years. So we'll be in 2025. So in 2028, the earliest you can collect is when you're 63. And then in 2031, the earliest you can collect is when you're 64. And then 2034, the earliest you can collect is 65. And you just push all those numbers back. If you wait until you're 68, that's where the new retirement age would be, or even and 68 works really well because that's essentially 10 years from the average life experience, right? Or life expectancy, which is average is 76 or messing up my numbers tonight, 78. And then you tie it to the life expectancy and you say, okay, the earliest you can collect from your life expectancy, so if it goes up or down and you'd expect it to go up, is we catalog the expected life expectancy every 3 years. And now it's just tied to life expectancy. So in 2035, if life expectancy has gone up to 80, then the earliest you can collect is, let's say, 67. And by 2100, another 70 years, life expectancy is up to 110. Well, the earliest you can collect is 97, because you got to assume that if life expectancy is going higher, then this idea of, like, right now, I'm 51 years old. I'm almost 52 in January. Wilford Brimley in the movie Cocoon was 53 when he filmed that movie. And if you remember Cocoon, I don't know if KJ, I'm just bringing this up out of the blue. KJ could probably pull up a picture of Wilford Brimley. I'd like to think I look better at 52 than he did at 53. Yeah. And so this idea that when people say, well, 50 is the new 40 or 60 is the new 50. Well, that's true because of the technology. And I'm sure Greg Easterbrook would love us talking about this because things are so much better and just getting better. Our life expectancy is better. The drugs we have keep us healthier and happier. And are there issues with drugs? Sure. One of the things that he wrote this week was about RFK Jr. and some of the things that he doesn't necessarily agree with, because you look at some of the stuff like measles and some of the vaccines. But like ultimately, if you look at are you going to take, because I guess one of the things with RFK Jr. is he wants to get rid of artificial sweeteners, meaning high fructose corn syrup, and require companies to use pure sugar. Well, okay, except every study basically says, how atomically it works within your body. Those two things are the exact same thing. There's no difference between using high fructose corn syrup and sugar. They're both glucose, and your body does the exact same things with them, right? So if our life expectancy keeps getting better and we keep getting healthier and we keep moving up, then that dude was 53 years old and he had diabetes. So you have to look at stuff like this and say, if our life expectancy is getting better and getting older, then we can't keep doing the same thing with our finances. We can't keep doing Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid the way that we have been, or it's just going to we're going to run out of money. And I know that that's why Trump is coming in and saying, let's raise tariffs. And there's a whole debate on tariffs. And it's going to be really interesting to see if the administration is serious about tariffs or if they're just using it as a weapon to try to level the playing field, which cool. Let's find what works. If that's what needs to be done, a sledgehammer to kind of balance the trade out with China and with Europe and some of those things, great. Because you can always remove tariffs if it's hurting. But we need to start looking at
the sleight of hand when they do that with the Social Security, man. And that's what bothers me with these administrations, right? They'll come in and they'll say, oh, we have this huge problem, right? These entitlements they're being blown out of proportion. Money's running out. We need to do something to change it, right? But what they tend to, I guess, conveniently leave out is the fact that they perpetually continue to rape the shit out of the pot and not put in, right? And then you'll have administrations, normally conservative administrations, right? And this is just going back over the last 20, 25, 30 years with, I think Reagan was like the first part of it. What they'll do is they'll do these tax breaks, right? Because Social Security, we'll use this since we're talking about it, right? Social Security is funded by tax revenue, right? And like I was saying earlier, it's one of the very few entitlement systems that has to be balanced, right? So you have to account for all the money coming in, right? So forever, good, bad, and indifferent, whatever the tax rate coming in is, that's what's going in the pot, right? So if we decide to do blanket tax breaks or tax cuts or whatever, then that's going to reduce the revenue coming in, right? And we're talking in general terms. I haven't done much.
But that's Social Security is a very specific tax on workers, though.
Yeah, very specific, right? So, but every worker gets taxed, though. Every worker gets taxed. Now, here's where the devil in the details go, right? If we cut that tax out, right? We say, like, I think the administration, the incoming administration is saying, okay, we're not gonna tax Social Security anymore. Then that's gonna cut out the funding for Social Security. But
I don't think that's what they're saying, though.
That's what they said.
So they're not going to.
That's in one of their tax reforms.
Well, yeah. Well, but hold on. I think the idea there is not they're going to cut Social Security taxes. I think they're going to cut taxes on those collecting Social Security. I think that's what
they said. That we can think, but that's not what they said. And then I told you, I told you the devil's in the details. Where we get in trouble is we get in trouble assuming what they say and not taking them for what they say, right? So another thing that's going to cause issues, right? I know immigration is a huge topic, right? It's a big topic and deportation is really big, but we don't take into account that immigration accounts for hundreds of millions of dollars a year in the Social Security pot every year, right? Now, if let's say we deport these 10 million whatever workers, right? We're going to lose a significant amount of that taxpayer revenue that they pay, right? Because those immigrants who are, however they acquire the Social Security IDs to work for these employers, they still have to pay those Social Security taxes. Even though they can't pull from it, they still pay into that pot, right? So you have those hundreds of millions of dollars going into that Social Security pot as well. That money is also going to be reduced. So when we talk about money running out, it's a little more nuanced than just the people who have contributed to it their entire lives are taking more than their fair share. I think that's a dishonest way of putting it, and the politicians are not being upfront when they present it like that. But in the interest of time, and I know we got a condensed schedule, in the interest of time, we can move on to something else. But that's something that I definitely like to revisit a little bit better when we got someone who's more experienced in that
right.
area.
So what I'm seeing on the Wall Street Journal, though, is it is benefits. They want to potentially cut the taxes on the benefits. So the people that are collecting Social Security. So as a worker, you pay your Social Security taxes. Then when you're old and you start getting your Social Security check, the administration is floating the idea of cutting the taxes to those people who are getting their Social Security.
But those taxes go back into the Social Security pot. They don't go anywhere else. So if you cut those taxes, you're not replenishing the pot.
Well, yeah, slower. I get what you're saying, but I don't know. I kind of
like I said,
I have a problem. Well, I have a problem with a lot of this stuff because, okay, am I a full-on taxes are theft person? No, but I lean that way. I think that when you have something that is taxed repetitively over and over and over, that's where I kind of have a problem with things. So you go out and you get a job and you get paid and you have your payroll tax, right? And then your company, they have to pay the taxes on the company. And then as your payroll tax, you go out and then let's say you put money into investments. And then when the money comes back out, you have to pay taxes on your capital gains tax. And then when you get that, let's say you have your retirement fund. Well, you have to, the money that you save for your retirement, you get taxed on that. And then so to me, it's just, I'm not a big fan of the government taking multiple bites of the apple on the tax dollar, which it's just, I'm much more of a, as far as taxes go, I'd much prefer tax use, meaning, again, I don't have a problem paying 50 cents a gallon taxes if that 50 cents per gallon of tax is going right towards fixing roads and bridges and the infrastructure that we drive on.
But that's exactly what the Social Security tax is, though. So there, the Social Security tax, which has to be accounted for, and that's why I said it's one of the very few tax processes that the government actually got right, because you have an accounting and it has to be balanced every year based off of the tax income coming in. So if you cut that tax and you cut that revenue stream, then.
But you know what? What did we say right up front? If the government would stop dipping into that fund, we'd be in a completely different space. That's the issue.
The funding would be so what they do is they'll dip into it with the promise of paying back later, and later never comes. Later never comes. It just, every administration says, "Oh, we're just going to take a little bit more, and we'll get it on the back end." The biggest issue we have in government, and that's going to lead us into the next thing, right? It's not so much overhaul, right? Let's talk about this when we talk about this cabinet. It's accountability of the functionality that's already in place, right? For decades, there has been an attrition of accountability and autonomy in government, right? So the FBI, who I will tell you is no fan of I am no fan of, nor are people of my ilk. We could care, I am the last one to defend the FBI or the CIA or any of the alphabet soup agencies. However, I am also having that targeting background. I am also aware of how a full dismantling or a full teardown of that organization would cause more damage than people believe it would do good, right? And we talked about this offline a little bit. I don't believe the right philosophy is to come down and we're just going to put a torch to everything and we'll build it back up bigger, better, and in our image is the right take, right? And I've seen anchors come on and they talking about, well, the so-called experts have been failing us for decades. Why not try something new, right? And that makes perfect sense. In an ideal world, that makes perfect sense. But here's where you run into the problem, right? You just can't. Some things you just can't do. And this is one of them things. You just cannot do it. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't. You have a machine that the entire world is depending on. And you're saying, the hell with all of that. We're just going to tear it down and good luck to everybody. We'll figure it out as we go. And that is bad policy. Well,
here's where I disagree with that. It's the army goes rolling along theory, right?
Sure.
If you look back in history, every army in the world, what they used to do is they would target officers. They would try to take out the head of you see a general or you see a colonel, you even see a lieutenant on the other side of the battlefield. You shot them because it caused chaos and it caused disarray and the army would fall apart. When the U.S., they realized pretty quick, you start taking out the officers. The officers were the only ones who were keeping the soldiers from going berserk and actually going on murderous rampages and wiping out and just going off, right? So I think that the way our country is and the way that this administration is talking about doing some of those things, such as it's not a burning the FBI from the top down. It's lopping off the top of the FBI so that the body can do the work that it's supposed to do and not be so beholden to a political ideology that has floated its way to the top. And you've seen that in the military. You've seen that in all the intelligence agencies. You've seen that throughout the government. And this is the idea. And I buy into this. I do think there's a political ideology that is floated to the top, and to get ahead, you have to play that political BS game instead of being good at your job. And a lot of the times you have people who are good at their jobs, who are a little more harsh, who are a little more straightforward. And so they're not as good at playing the game. And you have the soft foot who, well, I'm going to go tell HR what you said. And it's like, what? What are you talking about? Like, we're talking about the hard and fast problems here. Sure. And instead we're worried about running to HR and our country has become human resourceified, if I may coin a term. And I don't think that we're in a place where the meritocracy in America, that's what made us great, was meritocracy, right? So in one America, in a different America, in a different America, yeah. In a different America. There were, of course, there were breakthroughs, and it's probably more socioeconomic than anything else. But because even after 1865, it became much more of a socioeconomic thing, and blacks were, of course, shuttled into the socioeconomic side that held them down as well. On top of it, that's what I'm saying. Like, there were a few people that could break through here and there, but for the most part, I mean, true meritocracy. I think the best of the best are generally going to find a way. The Frederick Douglasses are going to find a way, but for every one Frederick Douglass that made it through, how many just as smart, just as bright African Americans didn't? Probably President Johnson. Yeah, President Johnson made sure of that. He made. Well, yeah. Sure. I mean, you can go back further than that. You can go back to Wilson. You can go back to those that. No. I'm talking about Andrew Johnson in 1865. Remember I said MAGA's mantra is 1865 to 1954. I am firmly convinced and entrenched. I cannot be convinced any different. If you go back and you look at the veto speech that President Johnson sent to Congress
from the Civil Rights Act of 1866, I hope that you will get an understanding of where I say, okay, some of his rhetoric is sounding real DEI, real anti-woke-ish for 2024. Even in 1865, it's the same thing. And it's like, dude, these dudes literally just got out of oppression for 200 years. And your biggest concern is giving them equal and equitable share in an economy is going to be discriminatory to the white population. That's bullshit. And you see these same types of tropes and these same type of rhetorics popping up in 2024, where they're like, oh, well, DEI is anti-discriminatory to white men. And you're like, stop the cap. That's bullshit. It is absolutely not. But I digress. You got your president already talking about giving reparations to damn colleges who discriminated for affirmative action. Are you shitting me? I thought we weren't doing reparations. It's just, well, I don't want to get off a tangent. We don't have a lot of time.
Right.
Right.
But the argument. So the argument there was, and I know what you're saying with that. The argument was the federal government is not going to give any funds to any school that discriminates based on race. Mm-hmm. Right. That was basically.
And what did he say? And continue the statement though. Because what your president said,
their endowments is what he said.
Yes. To compensate for the losses and damages experienced by those who suffered the consequences of those discriminatory practices.
Do you know who suffered the most of those discriminatory?
That sounds a lot like reparations, doesn't it?
Do you know? Well, that's rhetoric, but do you know who actually was the most affected by that? Ooh. Asians.
Shit. Asians benefited from affirmative action more than they suffered from it.
No, not in the past 20 years.
No, yes, they did. And we talked about this. Your boy who is in Trump's cabinet, the only reason the affirmative action cases got a leg up is because he realized that when he was presenting white faces, they kept getting kicked back. So he said he needed a minority to represent his affirmative action cases. That's Stephen Miller. Matter of fact, where's Stephen Miller now?
Isn't he going to be like the assistant chief of staff or something?
Funny how that works. Yeah, it's weird. Yeah, but he's there, bright and early. What? We gotta talk about your boy because we gotta go fast and furious. I gotta play.
First of all, Stephen Miller is not my boy. First of all,
no, not Stephen Miller. We're talking about SecDef. Stephen Miller is trained, and I hope he suffers an unfortunate incident. I truly do, but that's for another day. Here we go. SecDef. What you got? I can't hear.
We have a video. I hope.
Yeah, look like he don't want to act right though. Let me see if I remove it and play it again.
Oh, it's trying. Where's Major Hegseth? Major Hegseth, he's acting like a field grade officer. Can't find him when you need him.
Dang, out trying to get coffee or something right now. Like, come on, man. I put you on. Give me a sec though, because I always have a backup.
Pretending he's a true warrant officer.
I always have a backup to the backup. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna kick it over here. And I'm gonna remove you from there. Don't worry about it. I got you SecDef. Because we gotta hear what you're saying. It's important. Window. Boom. There we go. All right. We might not be able to see him, but we'll definitely be able to hear him.
Draw out in the last part of the book what an educational insurgency would look like, because I was a counterinsurgency instructor in Afghanistan, and kind of the phases that Mao wrote about. Yeah. And we're in middle phase 1 right now, which is effectively a tactical retreat where you regroup, consolidate, and reorganize. Yep. And as you do so, you build your army underground with the opportunity later on of taking offensive operations in an overt way. And obviously all of this is metaphorical and all that good stuff. But
so before I tell you what he was talking about, what's the
context?
I guess talking about. Before I tell you what he was talking about, I want you to try to see if you can guess what he was talking about.
Well, I mean, counterinsurgency.
So
I
yeah,
don't know if that's
go ahead.
well, I don't know when. So here's the problem with that. The context of something like that is very tough because you don't know the time frame of when he said it. You don't know the audience of what he was saying.
I got you. So that came out in 2022, and he was talking about a particular chapter in his book where he was talking about how he was going to use Christian schools to set up the next generation of people who have like beliefs in the system. So they're going to use the school voucher system theoretically, of course. Like you said, it's all theoretically. But what they would do is they would use the school voucher system and then set up the educational system to put forth a Christian belief system so that they can set up the next generation of Christian nationalists to be able to point the direction of the country in a specific direction for the next 30 to 40 years. And he said, we do this based off of the principles of counterinsurgency. And then he was kind of talking about his background and why he did it and how he did it, so on and so forth. So that's the background behind it.
Right. Okay. So with that little bit of that, here's one of the things I would say is that I think the trash needs to go down to the curb if you didn't hear that. I think that there is some, okay, for me, I look at it like this. I say that, first of all, anybody who says that this country was not built on Judeo-Christian values is wrong. Secondly, while this is not a Christian nation by definition, it is a nation that has been led by Christians, dominated by Christians through its history. So there are certain morals and values that have gone along with that. And this has all been pushed back really starting in about the 1930s, 1940s. There was a whole group of, I'm not even sure you would call them academics, but let's say academics that were leaving Nazi Germany because they were more along the lines of communists. And communists and Nazis do not get along. So they immigrated to the U.S. and they matriculated at Columbia University. And they basically started, for lack of a better word, indoctrinating the teaching profession against patriotism and against American values and some of those things and Christian values. And they pushed back against some of those Christian ideals. And you can't have that's where a lot of the argument of you can't have the 10 commandments. You have to, separate church and state, really the hard and fast church and state. This is the grouping that basically had the Pledge of Allegiance came out of that. If you know the original Pledge of Allegiance, under God was not part of that. So it was changing from the ideology of where you get your values is a church family-based value into a public sector primarily from the schools. So we've had that going.
But the Pledge of Allegiance was only used for propaganda for drumming up support for the wars, right? It wasn't like a founding document or anything, right? Like
no, of course not. But again, it was
stuff, right? Like
so it was, but it was also created as what we would now call a humanist ideal, which is to get away from the religious side you're pledging allegiance to something other than God, other than your faith. And so It was very much what we would call a humanist ideal now. And yes, propaganda, sure, of course, you had that. But the idea was to kind of weaken some of those religious ties. So if you take it in that and you say, okay, well, we've had 80 years of the idea that there should not be any churches, any faith groups, and this is something that's gone back and forth over the last 80 years as far as how much church should be allowed into schools. And you're seeing the pushback now in Oklahoma and Texas saying, hey, if we want to have the Bible, not only should we have the Bible, it should be a class, right? Do I think it should be a required class? No. You look at Utah. This is a states' right thing. In Utah, being a very LDS, and I'll say Mormon for those of you who don't know, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which is the church I go to, belong to, and grew up in, because there are so many LDS in Utah that we had actual time in school that we could take one class that was called seminary, right? So we could actually have one of our high school classes, which was counted as a religion class, and we would go to seminary. And outside of basically U.S. and some other parts in the West, you would have it here early morning ceremony seminary where you'd have to go before school, right? So to hear Hegseth say, well, we need to have that pushback, I understand it. I think that there is also this misnomer of, or misunderstanding of church versus state, right? The idea was never you needed to protect the state from the church. That was church versus state was to protect the church from the state. And people get this idea of, well, the founding fathers, they wanted separation of church and state, and you that's why we can't have the 10 commandments in these schools. I think that that's a highly misinterpretation of what that meant. But regardless, if Hegseth is saying, look, we need a counterinsurgency of the way that we have the public school system in this country is run, that it is dominated by the teachers union, that it is focused more on, and this is something that I think we could both agree with. And ironically, I think it's something that the right is finally starting to kind of figure out, and the left is traditionally has kind of thought this, but they've gotten away from it. Is that the schools aren't there to educate us. The schools are there to give you enough skills so that you can go out and be a productive worker and a productive consumer, and that's about it.
Sure.
And that used to be a thought, the 60s, that was huge for the left. It was, these schools, man, all they want to do is make you, they're going to make you go get a job, man, and then just consume, man. That's all you're going to do. And ironically,
but again,
they were right.
But the concern is not that. The concern, like in a vacuum, that makes sense. And again, that's why I said we got to start looking at these dudes and looking at the bigger picture with these guys. So I'm gonna give you a quote. So the potential sec dev says, our goal is to give patriotic parents the ammunition to join an insurgency that gives them America a fighting chance against educators. He goes on to say that these Christian schools should be seen as boot camps to groom children for the so-called insurgency. That's what the crop of these classical Christian schools are going to do in a generation. Policy answers like school choice, while they're great, that's phase 2 stuff later on once the foothold has been taken, once the recruits have graduated boot camp. That doesn't sound real democratic, man. So no matter how you cut it,
no.
That sounds like
you're talking about. Okay, hold on. There's a few things there.
Sure.
Our group, our goal. Okay, who's our? Okay, so there's a very distinct difference between Pete Hegseth as Secretary of State and Pete Hegseth as a parent and a father who thinks that the education system is broken. This is why people who argue religion get into so much trouble. Well, the Bible says this. And I'm going to read one verse. Well, if you're not talking about the context and who the audience was and what the purpose of it was, then you can take just about any scripture you want and you can twist it into whatever argument you're making. And I'm not saying you're trying to do that, but I think that this happens. And in this case, I think while you're unintentionally trying to it's unintentional. I think you're doing this all in very good faith, as you know, you and I, we always try to be in good faith. But I think that's what happens when you take certain things out of context and you are not able to, or you're not, whether it's our setting or whether it's because you're taking one line, one quote out of the back of his book, right? I would like to read.
That's what he said in the interview 2 weeks ago.
Okay. So in the interview 2 weeks ago.
I just want to frame it. 2 weeks ago, he knew the direction where he was going for SecDef, right? He's still putting out this kind of propaganda. Now you say, okay, hey, we can't take that out of context. That's just one line and one thing. Okay, cool. You can't. If you isolate that, you're absolutely right. But then you start framing out, and that's why I said the administration is starting to have a dangerous precedent, right? You take a Hegseth with this kind of ideology, right, and saying these kind of things, and you put him at SecDef, right? And then you take Steve Miller and you put him in that administration, right? And then you take back and I want you to watch this video that they got for your boy Russell Voigt, right? Voigt. And all of these things, Russell Voigt, right? He's in charge of the budget, OMB. And all of these things, you know, like I said,
he's the guy that he's the guy that they're all freaking out because he something with 2025, right?
Yeah. So again, all of these pieces, but here's the thing: all these pieces by themselves, they don't make sense. But you start putting them all in a line in one cabinet where they all have, let's just say, undue influence on the policy and direction of a country for at least 18
to 24
undue,
it's due.
Well, I'm just being generous.
Undue.
No, I'm being generous by saying undue because I don't want to seem like
administration. That's what the administration does. It influences policy.
Yeah, but I don't want to seem biased. So I'm gonna say, even though they're the heads of these departments, there are people who don't agree with them. So I'll say, you know, plus or minus, checks and balances, right? So I want you to watch this.
Sure. We could save the country in a sense of.
What is up with these videos today? Okay, we do not want to be great. That's okay. Because I planned for this. Hold tight, because we're going to run that one too. I have prepped and planned for that as well. Give me a sec. We're going to run it back. Time is ticking. So let me remove that off. We're going to present it here. Share screen.
That's funny. For all that stuff about Stephen Miller, you just quoted a Stephen Miller song.
Yeah, I know, right? Here we go.
In an ideal world, I mean, I think we could save the country in a sense of you know, the largest deportation in history. And once that starts, there's going to be, you're going to be winning a debate along the way about what that looks like, right? And so that's going to cause us to get us off of multiculturalism, just to be able to sustain and defend the deportation, right? If we're going to have legal immigration, can we get people that actually believe in Christianity? Is that something, or do we have to have, you know, are we not allowed to ask questions about Sharia law? So I want to make sure that we can say we're a Christian nation. And my viewpoint is mostly that I would probably be Christian nationism. That's pretty close to Christian nationalism, because I also believe in nationalism.
Behind closed doors, Vogt tells us not to take Trump's disavowal seriously.
I expected to hear 10 more times from the rally, the president, you know, distancing himself from the left, spooging me at Project 2025.
Yeah.
And you know what? Okay. He's running against the brand. He is not running against any people. Okay. He is not running against any institutions. It's interesting. He's in fact not even opposing himself to a particular policy. Yeah. He's been at our organization. He's raised money for our organization. He's blessed it from the, you know, I remember walking into our last day in office and told him what I was going to do. So he's very supportive of what we do.
Our investigation into Project 2025 began 2 weeks before the meeting with Vogt at a conference for religious nationalists in D.C.
The truth is, Christian nationalism is not a threat to American democracy. Christian nationalism founded American democracy.
Journalists from the Center for Climate
Josh
Reform
Hawley.
have come posing as potential donors, looking to meet those involved in Project 2025. They're not hard to find. The Heritage Foundation, the group running the project, are here. So is Vogt's think tank. We make the acquaintance of Mika Meadowcroft, an author on Project 2025 and a close aide to Vogt. He tells us that Vogt is running the secretive second phase of Project 2025.
The second phase of the book was to break down like actual sort of policy packets and executive orders and agenda items, things like that. That's been supervised largely.
The first phase of Project 2025 was a 922-page policy book published openly. The second phase is a comprehensive, concrete transition plan for each federal agency. These much more detailed plans are confidential.
Yeah, because obviously you wanted a little bit to be foyable. I'd be familiar with the voting process. If possible, Freedom of Information Act, yeah.
The Freedom of Information Act allows the public to request government communication.
All right, so in the interest of time, I'm gonna cut it right there. But basically, they just go on to get more, so on and so forth, right? So, and I know what you're gonna say, right? Oh, well, why do they do that, this, that, and the other? And I got it, right? But it's starting to look like a duck. It was already quacking like a duck, but we're still not ready to call it a duck yet.
What's the duck?
I think this administration is moving toward a dangerous Christian nationalist agenda that's going to endanger untold lives and course correct.
So?
What do you mean how so? We just spoke about it for like 3 months. We literally just talked about it for the whole 3 months.
Well, condense it.
Yeah, sure. I think Project 2025 is about as real as it is, and some of my biggest fears are coming to fruition. The people that are put in place are deeply aligned with the project and the Christian nationalist agenda. I think American Jesus should be labeled as a terrorist organization, and anybody who aligns with them should definitely be on a watch list. So, yeah, that's how I feel. I think all of these affronts of DEI and wokeness is just red herrings and mirrors to get people to get angry at the wrong people just so they can enforce this agenda. I do.
I think they're opposite sides of the coin. I think if on one side you have DEI saying, well, you have to have these requirements of certain ideological, and it's very much just the left, the ideology of the left has been broken down. I've heard it broken down into religious terms as well. So, if you're on the left and you're not down with, let's say, LGBTQ, you're kicked out. If you don't agree with this or that, you're no longer an ally in your part. So on the other side of the coin, you have this idea of, okay, Christian nationalism, and well, hey, we need to get back to the roots of this country and the values of the country. And I know part of your argument as well, those values were corrupted right from the start because of slavery. And we've argued slavery multiple times on this. I don't think
neither one should be taught. I don't think so. I'm not a fan of grooming and teaching kids about sleeping with dudes in kindergarten, just like I'm not a fan of sending my kids to prayer time in school. That's not a responsibility of the school.
Right. And what I'm saying is I think part of this is a backlash to that. And that's what I was just saying in kind of the last part was, I think because of the backlash where we've been sliding for the past 80 years towards that humanistic, pure secularism, anti-religion, anti-morals, if you want to use that word. Because if you look at the schools, and I'm in the schools right now, I've been able to do some time in these schools, and you do see some real interesting things go on where you can't say, okay, I was in a class and we were talking about that. This was the day after the election. Trump had been named the winner, and it was a history class, and we were talking about historically just how some of the history broke down. And I got a note from one of the other teachers that said over her, she's like, we're not, maybe it was a she, that I was going by the handwriting. It was really good handwriting. So I assume it was a female, because I don't know many guys with handwriting that look that good. Mine certainly doesn't. But it was like, hey, the administration says we're not supposed to talk about this. And I'm sitting there and as okay, fine. But at the same time, this is an historical event. This is something that is going to affect the lives of these kids. And we're not going to talk about it now. Do I think we should be sitting in there and you have one group saying, we won and you guys lost by, no, of course not. But why I thought it was a bit strange that you couldn't talk about what just happened in an election. You and I, when we were growing up, are you kidding? We talked about the election all day long. Whether it was, let's see, I'm trying to think my age group in high school, that would have been probably the 88 election of George Herbert Walker Bush. And then 92, I was a little bit older, so I would have been out of high school. But in school, that would have been very normal to at least in junior high and high school, to have conversations about the election.
96 and 2000 were my election years in high school. So
Yeah.
they were,
And I'm
they were,
and
they
I'm
were
sure you guys had conversations.
very much.
Right.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. So.
Yeah. So I think we're at the point where we've really gotten these kids. I don't know if there's such a bad thing to have a bit of a rebound, and maybe it's only 4 years. Maybe it's more. Maybe there's some nefarious stuff going on in the. But to me, I think if the nefarious stuff is, it's kind of like what you said last week. If the Trump administration is able to get term limits passed, then everything else was worth it, right? And I said that about the Supreme Court at the end of Trump's term last time.
That was correct. I mean, personally, yeah.
Yeah. So for me, I kind of look at it and I go, okay, if the outcome of the next 4 years is truly a mixing up of the swamp, if it's getting our institutions back to the point where we actually have a little bit of faith in them, that we believe the FBI is going to be fair in their investigations, if we believe that the other alphabet soups aren't going to be dominated by a political viewpoint that does things like signs letters that says the a political bombshell like the Hunter Biden laptop was clearly Russian propaganda, which turns out to be complete bullshit. It was legitimate. It was real. You've got, I think, things going on right now with like Tulsi Gabbard. I keep hearing this, oh, she's a Russian agent. She's a Russian agent. It's like, I think she should sue some of these people. She should sue them and force them under libel laws to prove that she's a Russian agent.
I don't think she wants people.
She's fair. Well, she's fair. Well, at that point, she's fair. But there's fair game. But I do think there's a point where, you have to stand up for yourself. Sure. And when you have people like on The View, you're telling me Whoopi Goldberg and these people and Anna Navarro have any, they know what's going on. Give me a break.
I mean, for every Whoopi Goldberg, you got countless told, right wing nuts.
Okay, what about this? What about this? What about what's her name? Congresswoman Duckworth, who was a helicopter pilot who lost her legs, right? Yeah. She's come out and said that Tulsi Gabbard is a Russian agent. Seriously? Like, okay, Congress, now maybe you ought to go investigate and find out. I think she should be investigated, and she better put up or shut up. I think there's some stuff that's going on.
I investigate it, because here's what's going to happen. One, I don't think Tulsi wants her information put out like that, because let's be fair. If it was a Democrat going to hang out with Russians and Koreans and stuff like that on a fairly regular basis, the right wing media will be all over it, right? And they will.
I'm all over investigations.
They will be all over it, right? And they'll be accusing them of everything under the sun. So the criticism, I think, is fair, right? What I don't want. What's up, Liberty? Welcome back. What I don't foresee happening is, because she's so intertwined with all those foreign agencies, and I'm pretty sure she hasn't disclosed all of them or all of her trips or what they talked about like she was supposed to. I don't think she wants that kind of smoke or that kind of scrutiny, because once you give a dog a stint, man, they don't get off. And if they want to come after you, they want to come after you. My biggest fear, and I'm gonna let you get the last word, because I think we're at 6 minutes. Well, my biggest fear is, I'm all about going after the deep state, right? But not at the expense of replacing it for a more corrupt deep state. Then that defeats the fucking purpose. And I feel like a Christian nationalist nation is just replacing one bad apple with an even more spoiled apple.
So I don't disagree with that, but I think that we're talking about two different things here. When you're talking about school choice and some of those things, he's talking about generational, right? He's not talking about these kids coming out of high school and giving them school choice. They're not going to be leading the FBI.
No. He's talking about starting now. He's talking about starting now in elementary school with the Bible and the Christian national principles.
Look,
and grooming them the right way.
I'll tell you what, right now, if there was 100% school choice in Georgia, like there is in some of the other, and I'm not sure exactly how it works as far as the money goes, but I would love to have a situation where I could put an ad on Facebook or on Indeed or just in my neighborhood and say, if you are willing to take that $10,000 that you are giving to public school and you give it to me, I will have a classroom in my house for 15 students. And I don't care what age they are between, let's say, age 8 and age 18. You do that, I will give them a better education for a year, for 9 months, whatever it is, than they will get out of any school. And I will have every age there. You could give me an 8-year-old, 9-year-old, 10-year-old, all the way up to 18. Give me 12 mix, whatever, white, black, Latino.
Sure.
And I will give them a better education than any school system will, because I can sit down with them and I can work with them and I can find out what their interests are. I can give them assignments based on the idea of critical thinking. I've told, I don't want them to be Bible schools either. But if a parent wants to send their kid to a Bible school, I think they should be able to too. But I think that our schools have become completely devoid of even teaching the most basic morals, because then you get this whole idea of, well, whose morals? Well, can we not say that it's wrong to punch somebody else for no reason? Can we say it's not okay for students to steal from each other? Can we say it's not? Except you can't, KJ, because what you get at this point is you get these parents who are so defensive that, oh, their poor little child, if there's something, it must have been the other person's fault. It's not my son or my daughter's fault. And that happens.
Well,
and
here's the biggest thing that I got, and I'm gonna let you get the last word because we're about to head out.
Sure.
So here's the biggest thing I try my best to convey with you. Mm-hmm. Christian nationalists ran this country for about 200 years, and they decided, and we're
Democrats.
That it doesn't matter, Democrat, red, because policy does not have a party, right? Christian nationalists ran this country for about 200 years, and they used people who look like me for hunting as a sport. That is a legit concern. That is a legit concern. And when you start hearing the dog whistles, wait a minute, I'm not finished. When you start hearing the dog whistles of yesteryear coming back, and people are starting the same rhetoric, when you can go back and read a veto letter from 1865 and draw parallels to that veto letter in 2024, you can say, hey, I've seen this play out before. I don't like Christian nationalists. Last time we let them take control of the country, it did not end well for a lot of people. I am not a fan of that. And that is what this is.
I will say this.
You're going to have to go back and watch the show on YouTube, buddy. Go back and watch this. Go back and watch another show from YouTube.
So Christian nationalism. All right. First of all, this nation was built, and when you say they were given in charge, the nation went the way the nation went, right? Okay.
Sure.
I don't think anybody is going back and saying that Christian nationalism is going to include return to slavery, return to shooting.
Why would they say that?
Well, but that's kind of the argument you're making. You say what you just said is we don't want to go back because when they were in charge,
they didn't say that in 1865 either, though.
But KJ, that's the implication. Listen, I know, but that's the implication. That's what it sounds like when you say, I don't want Christian nationals to be back in charge because 200 years ago, Christian nationals were shooting black folks for sport. Yeah. Okay. So what I'm saying is,
but we weren't slaves.
But today's Christian nationalism, and look, I am speaking solely out of ideals because I'm not a Christian national. I don't know any Christian nationals. Okay. I'm not speaking with any personal knowledge. I'm speaking out of the theory based. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, but I have never seen any theory or any ideals from Pete Hesketh or anybody else that says that we need to go back and include the evils of our past in the way forward. What I look at it is this. I think that there is and I can see as a parent, and I think this is where Hesketh is coming from, Hegseth and some of these guys are coming from, is that as Americans, we have lost moral high ground. We have lost our ability to hold people accountable based on what is right and what is wrong in the name of, I'm not even sure what in the name of. The humanist idea is and I'm blanking on the word, on moral relativity, right? Moral relativity is, who are you to tell me what is right and wrong? So I'm worried that if we continue down the path of moral relativity, it erodes at our nation's, the very heart of our nation, which is exceptionalism. We are supposed to, as Americans, believe that we can lift each other up. We are supposed to believe that we are better when we work as an American community. We are supposed to believe that we are better than the Chinese. We're supposed to believe that we're better than the Russians. We're supposed to believe we're better than the French. Because you know what? All of those countries think the same thing. You don't think the Japanese think they're better than the Americans, or the Chinese think they're better? Okay. So I think that if Christian nationalism, nothing else, if it gains nothing else but allows us to get back to a sense of patriotism for the sake of community and American exceptionalism, great. And I think if at the expense of
what's the
moral
risk?
relativism,
because it's sounding, and that's why I highly encourage you, and I'm gonna send it to you, brother. I highly encourage you to just go back and read it. Read about the Civil Rights Act of 1866. Read about Andrew Johnson and his dissension. Read about how Congress, some of the things that Congress was saying, and you'd be surprised. The same things you just said literally were in the dissensions of Congress in 1866. These are the same arguments. And you know what happened after that, though? But did you know what happened after that? Because I want to make this clear, and I need you to understand. We were not slaves in 1865. We fought a war, and we thought we'd settled that, right? We had black representation in Congress.
Until a bullet into the back of Abraham Lincoln's head.
That's what I'm saying. We had representation in Congress. Things were going good.
I know.
We were getting ready to do sharecropping.
It was
and
starting.
Lo and behold,
It was starting. Yes.
What I'm saying, lo and behold, Christian nationalists came and took over, and the Christian idealism of separatism took over, and things did not go well for about a good 90 years.
But KJ, that was okay. Hold on. That was Christian. If you want to call that Christian nationalism,
that was Christian nationalism.
Let me say something. That was Christian nationalism put up in lieu of flat out racism. That was we are going to take our racism and we're going to wrap it in the flag so we can try to get it so we're going to join all the white people together. It was not it had nothing to do with Christianity. It had everything to do with racism and keeping the black man down. And that's exactly what it was. So nowadays, I don't think that's true. I think nowadays, if you have a Christian like myself and a conservative like myself, anybody starts saying, hey, we're gonna go out and let's screw with these black guys. I'm the one going, F you, dude. I'm the one who's I'm the guy who says you want to give that order, I'm shooting you first.
No, you're absolutely right. There's a difference between Christians and Christian nationalists. That's why I told you. The difference is I can trust a Christian, right? Because their values are rooted in the belief of the Bible, right? But a Christian nationalist, we need to have somebody.
This is what we need. We need to put a call out. We need somebody who claims themselves as a Christian nationalist to come on. Oh, I'm dead serious. We need somebody who can come on who says, I am a Christian nationalist, so we can find out what if this is real and what if it's bullshit. Because without that, we're both guessing about what the intent is.
It will be the same. It will be akin to having Stephen Miller go for months saying, "Oh no, we're not going to do this. We're not going to do that," and getting in. Like I don't want people to lie to me, right? I don't want people to lie to me, right? I don't need another person to come on here and lie and be like, oh yeah, we're not doing that. Sure.
Well,
Sure. That's like if you asked anybody, in the 30s or the 40s, hey, are you in the Klan? No, we're not in the Klan. The Klan doesn't exist. That was the running joke, right? The politicians, the policemen, they weren't in the Klan. The Klan didn't exist. It was in the minds of the people, right? But that sure shit didn't stop hundreds of thousands of people from being strung up, right? So we can ask the Christian nationalists, hey, what are your goals? They're gonna give you all the play-by-play bulls. Oh yeah, no, we're gonna make America great and we're gonna believe this, that, and the other. And that's bullshit, right? Because I can't hear you say one thing and then see you do another thing, right?
But on that, didn't we hear Pete? Okay, that clip you showed.
Yeah.
Didn't he say something specific? Did he say something specifically about Christian nationalism?
Yes. No,
Okay.
not in that clip, but later, before that clip, it's the sentence before that clip started.
Okay. So that's my point though, is if he's willing to come out and have this on a podcast and he's willing to say, this is what I think, then I don't know what, at the very least, hey, we can do it. We can do it like when Liberty came on. You want to come on and you want to have a pseudonym and you want to, and maybe it doesn't go anywhere. Okay. And I'm kind of with Liberty. Like I think all Christians I know are against racism. And I think, I don't know. I've lived in the South now most of my adult life. And I honestly can tell you with all factual base, I've never met somebody white that I thought was like a blatant racist. I know there's some that have.
So you're gonna look. Wait. You're gonna look here and tell me square in my face that you have never met a racist Christian? Never.
I have never met anybody that. I have never heard a white person. I've never been around. Maybe it's just I don't run in those circles. I've never heard any white person casually drop an N-word and say these N-words need to get out of the way, or this country's getting screwed over by these N-words.
Yeah.
But if it's so prevalent, I would think that just in normal conversations with me and another white guy, that there would probably be some, hey, that guy, that freaking N-word, even some casual stuff. And we've talked about this before, and I'm not saying they don't exist. Okay. But I think that this idea that the intent is to take us. What? Which?
If it was so prevalent, they probably wouldn't have elected a black president. That's irrelevant. That's like saying, oh, if people weren't racist, then Frederick Douglass wouldn't have never made it to the White House. He wouldn't have been invited to the White House.
I will say this, and I'm going to end on this note. I think there is bigotry in this country. I think there's bigotry on both sides of every racial issue. I think that this election was a referendum on the country being upset with how things have gone over the last 4 years, about being told things and being gaslit.
Sure.
I think that the Trump administration, for all of its faults, I think is going to be a winds of change. Now, whether that winds of change is going to lead us in a good path or a bad path is yet to be seen. I think that when you have the media, which has done its bang up job, like Joe Scarborough and his wife from whatever their show for the last 4 years, screaming about how Trump is a Nazi, and then going down to meeting him and having a great conversation at Mar-a-Lago, tells you some of the BS. I think that, again, checks and balances are a wonderful thing. I think the legislation, I still don't trust that craziness is going to be able to happen. So like you, and just as an example, you thought it was crazy to have Matt Gaetz as the attorney general. Well, 4 Republican senators agreed with you. So there's your checks and balances, right? So I think that whatever Stephen Miller wants to push, or whatever the OMD guy, OMD, that's probably, I think that's a band from the 80s. Yeah. OMD, okay. So maneuvers of the dark. OBM. Right. So I think that you're always going to have these ideals, and there were this. Now, if you want to say 2025 playbook, okay, fine. But again, just because it's a playbook, it's not legislation yet, and it's not going to be legislation because it has to be voted on in legislation. And when you have legislation, you have, actual people reading. I think that ultimately what I look for, and we're going to be talking about this.
This is going to be a great 18 months. This is going to be a great 18 months, because I am going to sit back and just what a ride.
Well, and that's kind of where we're going to end up being, where we were 6 months ago.
Man. Yes. You're 11 minutes over. It's not me. I'm not holding them. It's not me. I promise you it's not me.
I know. Well, it's kind of where it was 6 months ago where we went, can we just fast forward and see how this show ends? Can we just finish this election and see same thing now? But I will say this, and last one, because someone's coming in. Last one.
I told you.
Ultimately, the vast majority of things that happen at the federal level do not affect us much at all. The biggest things that happen at the federal level are going to be the taxes and how we interact on the economic basis of things like tariffs, et cetera. And hopefully Trump can do some of the things that he's talked about, getting the hostages released from Palestine. We haven't talked about that. Getting Ukraine to get that resolved, getting the border more secure. I'm willing to give that time up. And one of the reasons I would not have voted for Harris, because they'd had 4 months and none of those things got done. So ultimately, I'm hopeful, but I also kind of go, most of this stuff not going to matter all that much. I kind of hope it does. I hope the chaos is a good thing, because there's a point where, I don't think Trump is someone who just wants to see the world burn. But if you believe that the Joker really was somebody, do you really think I'm someone who has a plan? Yes, he had a plan. Are you kidding? Everything had to go right for his plan to work. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
I think he's got 18 months. He's got about 4 to 6 different big legislative pieces he could pass, whether that's judges or infrastructure. I don't think he'll be able to get everything done. We'll see. Like I said, 18 months is usually the time they get.
And if he fails, you'll see a huge blue wave in 2026.
We'll see. We can only see. All right,
my brother. I'm happy we kept it under 75 minutes. That's pretty good.
I told you. I tried to get you on the hour. I had you on the time. It's not me. So please tell her don't beat me up. It was not me this time. All right. We are out. Good. I will see you next week, man. Have a great one, brother. Good week. Yep. Bye-bye.
Have a good Thanksgiving.
All right. Happy Thanksgiving. Bye, guys.
Gee, Ray, what do you want to do tonight?
The same thing we do every night, Pinky. Try to take over the world.
All right, yo, let's get into it.
Try to take over the world. Try to take over the world.
And greatest chaplain in the world, Mr. Lance O'Neill.
Try to take over the world.